Hello and welcome back to the Wisely Automotive YouTube channel. Now, if you've been following us for a while, you'll know that in the past we used to do preparation videos where we'd show you around our preparation process on BMW i3s. Now, we haven't done one of those in a while, but you guys used to quite enjoy them. So we thought we'd pick a car and do another one. So the car in question is this Protonic Blue 94 amp hour range extender, which you may have recently seen in a video of ours where Martin showed the collection process and talked a bit about the battery and a few other things. So if you want to see that video, click above. But yeah, why we chose this car? Well, no particular reason. Each car needs different things. Some need a lot of paintwork, some need a lot of mechanical stuff, some need tyres, etc. So really it's just a case of picking one at random and hoping that we find some interesting stuff along the way and showing you through the process. So without further ado, let me spin the camera around, and in the usual fashion, we'll start with the exterior. In typical UK fashion, it has just started raining, but before the car gets covered in rain, let me quickly show you around it. If you haven't watched Martin's video, this car's actually done 99,000 miles, so it's almost hit 100. And actually, bodywork wise, it's a lot better than I was expecting. We actually don't need to do any sort of hard prep, and by that I mean sending it for actual paint to be applied at a body shop. Where there's a few bits of polishing, there's a few bits of touching in that will be needed, but actually the majority of it's really tidy, especially when you factor in its age and mileage. The front bumper, given that it's done this mileage, obviously there are a few stone chips. Someone in the past has made an effort to touch them in, and to be fair, it's not been done that badly. So yeah, there's nothing really there. However, and this is quite easy to miss sometimes because you generally sort of assess cars from this height, but if we look lower down, there's just a tiny little crack there, which on its own is not particularly concerning me, but what's happened, and when you start seeing the sort of indentation marks on this lip, you'll start to notice that something's gone on here. This is cracked. This is sort of pushed out of place, and you can see here that tab, should be holding all this together. And if we look deeper in, we'll see there's, for example, this thing here hanging, which it shouldn't. So yeah, it's had an impact. And realistically, because there's these two flaps at the back just before the airbox that go up and down, we need to check that, make sure that's still working, and ultimately replace this. So a little bit of cost, not as expensive as you'd think. If I actually by chance I have an i3 with a bumper removed, so if I show you here, essentially what's damaged is all this here. So you can't just buy this front component of this airbox. You do unfortunately have to buy this bit as well, but it's about, I think it's 110-ish plus VAT. So it's not the end of the world, but we'll also want to check this crash bar, make sure that's okay. I'm pretty sure it will be, but yeah, we'll show you that process once it's on the ramp. Going back to the car, yeah, really getting wet typically, but anyway, that was the front bumper. These front lights are all secure, that's important. And now we move over to the driver's side, and actually before I get any more wet, I'm going to pull the car in and continue from inside, so bear with me 1 second. The lighting in here is not as good, and you'll hear the trains going by overhead, but yeah, typical English weather, nothing I can do about that. Also, the car's now wet, so a few of the things I wanted to show you won't quite be as clear, but anyway, is what it is. So driver's side of the car, the main thing really is the tyres. So while they're all very good tread, the fronts are winter tyres. They are Goodyear's Vector 4 Seasons, I think that's the name. Now, like I say, while they're on good tread, these are winter tyres, and on the back of the car are summer tyres. Now, we've done plenty of videos about tyres, and it's generally quite a complicated subject because you've got different things going on for winter sets, different things going on for summer. You've got the 19-inch, the 20-inch, i3s have wider wheels. So if you're unsure on any of that, or you want to learn a bit more about that, click above and we'll link the last video we've done about BMW i3 wheels. But whether it's an i3 or any car really, mixing winters with summers is really a big no-no. Now, it's not illegal. I don't think it would fail an MOT, and actually in sort of summer months, I don't think it's half as big a problem as in winter, because generally speaking, okay, the winter tyre won't be quite as effective in the summer because it's not sort of in its kind of peak operating temperature, whereas the rear will be. But ultimately, the worst there is maybe a bit of understeer. which the i3 inherently has anyway a little bit of, being a rear-wheel drive car with really quite slim front tyres. The problem is in the winter, where you've got tyres at the front which are gripping, you know, a lot better than at the rear, and you go into a corner, those fronts are gonna hook up, they're gonna find traction, and you're gonna get a pendulum effect where the rear of the car just tries to overtake you, and it's really not something we would recommend doing. And in this case, they absolutely have to go. So yeah, we will fit two Bridgestones to the front to match the rears. The rears are on about I think it's about 4 mil, so they've still got quite a lot of life. That doesn't sound like a lot of life, but if you've seen any of our previous videos or coverage about the Bridgestones, that is, I think they start with about six and a bit. So yeah, there's still plenty. They were replaced in 2023. You can see on these Bridgestone tyres there's a thing here. So 4423. This is being filmed in May 2024, so they're they're not even half a year old. So yeah, that's the tyre situation. While we're at it, we will get these refurbished. A lot of them aren't scuffed, but they have started corroding on the centre, also around the centre cap. Quite common for diamond cut wheels. It's where water sort of ingresses under the clear coat and starts sort of messing with the aluminium. I think it's called aluminium corrosion. I'm not an expert. If you know about the subject, maybe comment below so others can benefit. But yeah, both of them are suffering from that. And we've also got a few scuffs. Generally, given how good the car is overall, I know it's done 99,000 miles and it's going to be at the lower end of our stock sheet, but nevertheless, it's a nice looking car. So getting that done and spending the money will really lift it. While we're here, the Rex flap is always worth checking, and what you'll see here is this one's actually sticking a bit. Now that is often confused as an electronic issue or something to do with this little fella here, when actually all it is this surface here sort of almost becoming too dry and brittle and just causing friction with this and literally just holding it in place. And we'll show you at the end when we're in the workshop what you can do about that, because it's super simple. You just literally need to spray a bit of silicone spray there and that will sort it. So yeah, we'll leave that alone for a moment. The mirror caps, lots of bug splats. You unfortunately won't be able to see it now because of all the rain, but they will really improve once we've given it a polish. And charging flap, all good. We're working on a video where we're gonna show you sort of almost like create a checklist of what you need to check on an i3 if you're buying one elsewhere. Obviously our preference if you're in the UK would obviously be to come and buy one from us because they're fully sorted, you've got our warranty and there's nothing to worry about, but we understand that sometimes people are looking for cars elsewhere. So yeah, keep an eye out for that video, because we'll also actually include a checklist of things that you can download to take with you when you're viewing cars, and you might be surprised to see how much needs doing on cars elsewhere. Around the back of the car, generally everything's really good. Really surprised to see this eDrive badge is all in really good order. Nothing's missing, everything's good. This boot lip, again, it's a shame it started raining because it was one of the things I wanted to show you guys. There's a few little sort of, I think it's like white paint or something, but that should hopefully disappear once we polished it. It won't be perfect, but this is probably the kind of the highest wear area of any i3, and especially on a 7-year-old 99,000 mile car, I think it would be overkill to get that sprayed. You can also buy these kind of protectors. They come in carbon, gloss black, matte black. So if it's something that you're wanting to improve cheaply rather than sending it to a body shop, you can just cover that up. Although in my opinion, covering it up, you still know it's there. But anyway, that's that. Rear bumper, all good. Parking sensors generally all right. Tiny bit of pitting on this one. It'll improve once we've polished it, but the top coating hasn't sort of started to blister away yet. So generally we will leave that. Little mark here as well, which again is like a white kind of paint or something. I'm pretty confident that's on the surface, so that will polish off. This is just dirt, that's nothing to worry about. Of note, but not of concern, is that there are 2 sets of number plate screws, although that's not unusual. This position here is kind of the BMW standard sort of templated position for rear number plate holes here in the UK. Here, these were done by whatever well, we know who this company here, when they fitted their tacky metal plates. So their holes, I'll show you the rear one, you can see they're on the extremes. So shame really, because it's not a lot of effort to just put the original plate that you've taken off over your branded plate and just drill through the holes and save the bumper from having extra holes. But hey, I guess when you're a mass market operator, it's all about time. So they just put the new number plate along and just drill new holes. But anyway, we will, for continuity, we will use those holes. Yeah, bit of a shame. Anyway, in the boot, we've already done a sort of initial check over and clean of this car. By no means a sort of full clean, but just really so we can assess it. So there's a few things in the boot which usually would live in their kind of corresponding places. But we've got the granny charger. This is the Gen 2 cable, manufactured by a company called COP, I believe. Yes, there it is. COP's the name. Not the most reliable of the 3 or 4 generations of BMW chargers, but we have tested it and it works. It's also covered by our warranty, so yeah. Cup holder will be reinstated to the front once everything's done, and the parcel shelves all in good order. So yeah, nothing particular to worry about here. So that's about it around the back. I guess we'll need to peel off the remnants of this sticker. Ironically, the amount of that sticker that's left corresponds quite nicely to the amount of that company that's left at the moment. But I'm sure you've heard about that, or if you haven't, I'm sure you can Google it. Moving on to the near side of the car, all really good. There's one little chip here on the on this kind of crease line. In the rain, it's not really that obvious, but we've actually already touched it in. It doesn't look great at the moment because we still need to flatten it and then polish it, but it was really just to see if we can get away with it, because if not, we'd have had to book it in the body shop. But yeah, we're happy with that. It'll look a lot better actually once we finished it. It was just it's just an initial effort. Also, one other thing to mention, so these plastic sills here, they come with almost like a black protective sticker here. It's like PPF, but it's not, because it's not see-through. It's very thick, but it is a sticker and it does actually come off. We've already peeled it off on both sides, obviously, just to make it match. The reason for that was just up here, yeah, it was just starting to lift and there was a lot of sort of water and grit and stuff getting in there, and it just didn't look that good. To replace it would be pointless, because I think it's like a 20-30 pound sticker and it's protecting like a £100 sill, which is plastic and designed to take impact. So yeah, we've just done away with it, but that's why there's a bit of a colour difference between this bit, which has obviously been covered up for 7 years, and the bit that's dirty. But once we give it a clean, that should hopefully improve. The alloys on this side, the rear one is actually really quite good. There's a tiny bit of corrosion. Because we're doing the other 3, we will get that one refurbished as well, but that tyre will go back on, which is the correct spec EP500 Ecopia, also replaced same time as the one on the other side, so late 2023. And I think on the exterior that's about it. That's that other winter tyre, so that will get replaced with another Bridgestone as per the other side. Windscreen seems to be an original one, and it has got quite a lot of kind of little chips, but actually no major ones, I don't think. We didn't pick up on anything when we collected it, and there's nothing in the notes, and I can't see anything. So yeah, nice original screen. All of this is intact, which is nice. So that's everything covered on the exterior. So now let's have a quick look inside. The interior is generally looking really tidy. I don't think it had rear passengers very often. It's a bit dirty, but we'll give it a clean. Should come up nice. And this front seat, okay, there's some water stains here, but they will get a lot better. And actually, if you look at this bolster, given this car's 7 odd years old and done 100,000 miles, it really impresses me how well, or how little these wear. I think part of it is a lot of cars where we used to see a lot of wear here and here. They're quite upright, or they're there for quite a lot of support. You know, M Sport seats, things like that, and you're rubbing them every time you get in and out. Whereas here, because it's generally quite flat, we rarely see. Okay, on the loft interiors you see a bit of wear, but they generally hold up really well. And even this fabric here, we rarely see any kind of wear. Now let's have a look around the rest. Steering wheel's looking nice. Really, I mean, I've already checked it and I know that there's nothing else we're going to have to do in here. This little thing here, if you've sort of found one of these in your car and don't know what it does or where it goes, it is just here. So if I show you on the other side, that's what it's meant to look like. It just protects you from this sort of sharp edge. So yeah, I'll clip it on when I've got two hands, but it just basically pushes on. So yeah, now if we look here, something I hadn't noticed actually or been told about, this cruise control button is kind of damaged. Now I know it's done 100,000 miles and you know, I know that you can't make them perfect, but that would bug me, even if I was, you know, buying a car at the lower end of the market. So unfortunately, despite this is quite expensive, you can't just replace this, you have to replace this as well. And it's a bit of a pig of a job to take the airbag off, but we've done it enough times to make it pretty quick. But yeah, we will be replacing that, unfortunately, because yeah, I wouldn't be able to live with that. And if I just close this door, the other thing that Martin has reported is that if I turn it on, and this is something that we've covered before in our videos, and let's just let that stop beeping. I'll just put my belt on. It's really common and we've spoken about it before, but if I turn the driver's heated seat on, you'll see that after a few seconds it turns off. And now sometimes that can be a minute or two, but usually it's within a few seconds. And as you can see, it then doesn't turn back on. It will turn on if you let the car go to deep sleep, so jump in it later in the day or tomorrow, but for now, that's now kind of unavailable. And yeah, really common, and it will mean we'll have to change the cushion, but more on that later. The rest of the interior, like I say, all good. We've got the Pro navigation, which was optional back on the pre-facelifts. We've got Harman Kardon, and we've got the sunroof, which I thought I'd quickly show you. So, in fact, if I jump out the car and sort of film it from here, the reason for wanting to show you this is very often what we find is people will be coming from estate cars or SUVs or whatever, where they're used to like a really big sunroof. And obviously, we understand that for a lot of you, the buying journey starts online, and you're doing your research online, and it's just one of those things. You'll sort of add it to your wish list or your must-haves list. You know, I must have a sunroof, and quite often the first time you actually experience it or see what you've been kind of really holding out for is when you collect it, and you kind of look at it and go, really, is that it? So yeah, I just thought I'd show you. So if you imagine, you know, I'm quite tall, my head's here. It doesn't go sort of beyond that point, and it's got that really big intrusive kind of T-bar, and actually things get worse once you open it, which if I do that, you'll see the glass only goes back basically halfway. That's not like a first step or anything, that is it. So yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, super nice option to have if you're looking for an i3 with absolutely everything, or you're just absolutely hell-bent on the sunroof, then there'll be no swaying you. But if, like I say, you've kind of decided it's something you might like to have, but haven't actually sort of looked into it or researched it, maybe come and see one or find one with the sunroof, because you might be a bit underwhelmed. And with, I'd say, less than 10% of cars for sale having the sunroof, you're really excluding a lot of cars which might be a better, you know, a better deal, better value, lower mileage, etc. But anyway, just thought I'd show you that. But all works, and it'll certainly help sell the car. And finally, just this trim here. There's a bit of damage there. Might seem like overkill, but quite often with these kind of things, it's, I mean, it's really not gonna cause any issue. Nothing's gonna leak in there, but you know, every time whoever buys this gets in, they'll see this. And with preparation, you know, we can't make them brand new, but often it's about bang for buck. And this part, obviously it runs from here, including all this rubber here, all the way down, including this bit here. You'd think it's super expensive. I think it's like 20, 30 pounds. So yeah, that's why we'll get that done. Interior wise, that's everything. Generally all very good. Cosmetically, actually really well taken care of car. The person who part exchanged it with us actually has moved on to a Polestar. They were doing about 20,000 or 25,000 miles a year. So that was probably going to be the better tool for them. But yeah, it just goes to show that you can do really, you know, quite long journeys with these regularly, and they're a pretty comfy place to be. But yeah, next step, let's plug it in and then we'll get it on the ramp at the end. So before we get the car on the ramp, we're just going to run our diagnostics using ISTA, which is the BMW Diagnostic system. Usually we would do this on the ramp, but we've got a few cars backlogged that need jobs on there, so do a bit of homework first. We might find some things that we need to do whilst we're on the ramp. So every car we sell gets plugged in to ISTA, and we generally check what's what. There's also some sort of generic things that we check on each car. Each one's different. Obviously there's range extenders, BEVs, there's older ones, newer ones. So we sort of create a list of things we need to check on a sort of car by car basis based on what we found on our initial kind of investigation. But generally speaking, first things first, we check the fault codes. So i3s and generally most modern BMWs store a lot of codes for all sorts of random things. You know, even if the alarm's gone off or your key fob battery's low, or I'm using those examples because I know they're on this car, but generally speaking, like if you've plugged into a rapid charger and it didn't communicate, that will get logged. Everything gets logged, and it can look a bit daunting if you don't know what you're looking for. And there's some that are sort of red herrings that we know are nothing to worry about, but do pop up and could kind of end up being something that you chase unnecessarily. But anyway, with this car, so it's already done the test. It takes quite a long time, so I might cut this a bit to sort of avoid you having to wait, because this is a very slow system. But if I click display fault codes, we have got essentially 4 codes. There is a alarm activation, as I just said, a heated seat brake in the line for the driver cushion. So that's the lower part, this here, which is very common. And then we've got a communication fault with a charger. So for example, just to show you how this works, I can click show fault code, goes in, tells me sort of, it gives me like an initial preview of what it's about, and it says if everything's okay, the fault's caused by the charging station, etc. So we'll close that. Now, immediately what I'm noticing here is, so if we organise this in mileage order, these go back, so the car's on 99,634 miles. These codes go back to 99,249. So given it was used in it was quite a high mileage user who sold it to us, these codes don't go back far at all. And actually, if we click into it, each code then also, if I do show fault code, each fault code is also then time-stamped, and it shows every time it was triggered. So if we go in here, it shows frequency once, time 21st of April. We bought the car on the 24th of April, or Martin drove it back on the 24th of April. So, and there it is, when it triggered, what time, everything, what speed it was. Now that makes me think that this car has had a fault code clear done very recently, because it's just impossible for there only to be these codes. For example, the heated seat one, if I go into that and we go into the logs, so 16th of April, so a few days before we bought the car, at 7 p.m, traveling at 49 kilometers an hour, and then 24th of April, which is the day, in fact 2 p.m, that Martin would have been turning that on. So I think either it happened on the 16th of April for the very first time, or the person hasn't used their heated seats through all of winter. I'm not so sure. And also, just given there are no other codes as well, I think maybe it's been cleared. But that's fine. We've done sort of hundreds and I think 150 miles testing ourselves on this car, so we're kind of satisfied there's nothing lurking. But good to confirm the heated seat failure, and that is something to add to the list, so we'll take that out, replace the pad. We unfortunately can't sort of bodge it. I know there are bodge kind of repairs available, but ultimately heated seats, if they're a safety item, if you know, if there was a short circuit or something and it caused a fire because the thermistor's been, you know, wired manually or rerouted or whatever, and the car burns down, that's you know, negligence on our part. So unfortunately, new part, quite expensive, lots of labour, but yeah, that's one to add to the list. And otherwise, yeah, low battery on one of the key fobs. So we will do a fault clear right at the end. That gives us like a blank canvas. So in the event of any warranty claims or whatever, we know exactly what has happened since, or etc. So yeah, we can kind of tick that off the list. Next up, we've got the battery health certificate. So this is something that we check on every i3 we sell. And that is a sort of paper document generated by ISTA, like an official BMW document, and it's done using information stored in the SME module. So if I do continue test module, evaluate battery condition, click continue. So here we go, high voltage battery data is being read out of the SME. A fault in a cell module of the high battery, blah, 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 and continue. And now we wait. And here we go. So we've got a current state of charge 82%, operating range of state of charge 10% to 87%, and the battery capacity determined by the SME 94.5%. Then it says the remaining capacity is still sufficient as it's greater than 75%. Interesting, it says 75% because I thought the battery warranty was 70%. But nevertheless, what it then suggests, so if I click continue, so it then offers us the opportunity to kind of print an official PDF document which confirms that, which we will do. And that's now saved, and I will print it in a moment and show you. And the next step after that, it basically says if the remaining capacity of the battery is insufficient, or if the customer has requested it, the capacity of the high voltage battery can be determined by discharging fully, and fully charging. The high voltage battery is then discharged at almost 0% by actual electrical load, so essentially turning the heater on, and then fully recharged, and that's monitored by the SME as it happens. There's a lot more kind of technical stuff there, and then it asks you whether you want to do that. We are going to say no in that case, because essentially it means leaving ISTA plugged in while the heater's running flat out for, in this case, you know, hours, if not probably a day, well, I don't know, maybe not a day, and then you have to plug it in, and through the whole thing ISTA needs to be plugged in, so you've got to connect the 12-volt system to a support. And yeah, it's actually something we've never needed to do. We've never had a battery sort of show up as needing that, nor have we ever had a customer complaint that's come to us. So yeah, this, so I'm going to click no, and I'm going to click continue. And that's that one done. So I can tick that off. Here is where that report has just generated. And what we will do, so 94%, it was actually 94.5, I think. We're going to print that. Say hi, Mike. There we go. So that is now ready to go in the file, and it shows when it was done and the VIN number. And if you're interested in how that number compares to other ways of determining the battery health, click above to see Martin's recent video where he actually picks up this car and touches on that and shows you some figures that he's managed to generate using other sort of apps and stuff. And also do make sure to follow us, because we do have a detailed video coming up all about BMW i3 battery health, and in it we sort of showcase and really dig deep into a 178,000 miler. So that should be a really interesting video if that's something you want to learn more about. So anyway, battery health certificate done, I've ticked that. Now 12-volt battery. So we will essentially work out whether this car is still on its original 12-volt. Hang on, I can't really, very bad at multitasking. Here we go, service functions. I think it's in body, voltage supply, battery support, display, Now we'll let it do its thing. We would check this on every car. However, on this car in particular, a new 12-volt battery is very much sort of on the cards. Being a 17 plate, that battery is now 7 years old, if it is still the original one, and that's what we're about to check. And also it's done 99,000 miles. So there is, you know, if the 12-volt battery is covered by our warranty, so with self-warranting, sometimes we have to take a view on it, and it's almost better to be preventative and get that replaced in advance on a car where, you know, statistically it is probably likely or more likely to fail within that warranty period. Just saves everyone the grief, and we have them on the shelf, and they're sort of 80-ish pounds plus that. So anyway, let's find out here whether the battery has ever been changed according to ISTA. So it hasn't. So last battery exchange is 0 kilometers, current mileage 160 kilometers, year of manufacture 2017-06, and I'll show you on the battery when we're in the back how you can check on the actual battery physically what the date stamp is, because it's not where some people think it is. But yeah, that's basically the original battery, and what ISTA has done here is it's kind of looked into the data it has, how many times the car's been turned on and stuff, and it has tried to make a prediction of how healthy that battery is, and it is saying 34%. You can then, if I just scroll down, and it's showing here right in the orange, and so as a result, that is, you know, definitely a candidate for a new 12-volt battery for us. I'm not saying it necessarily is if this is your car, you've got to take a view on it, and we're thinking of doing a full video where we touch on the whole 12-volt battery subject, the coding of it, etc. But in this case, seeing what we're seeing here, we're going to get that replaced. Here it shows me more information, and it's kind of predicting this battery's ability to do different things. So the battery wear based on cycles is 34%, we know that already. Starting ability, 97%, so it's unlikely to sort of let you down in the winter, but nevertheless, it's you know, it's not 100%. And then there's availability of comfort functions, battery load due to engine starts. So yeah, that's kind of that. Definitely decided we're going to replace the 12-volt on this car. Just to touch on it though, while we're on the subject, if you own an i3 already and you're sort of reading online and thinking, oh, I need to replace it at 5 years or 7 years or whatever, you know, we have cars here that are sort of 14 plates, 15 plates, and they're still on the originals. So there are two sort of schools of thought. What I would say is, if you're not sure about it and you're bringing your car into us anyway for a service, what we can do is we can check that and see what the car's suggesting. If that's under sort of 50% or something, then while it's here, you might as well get it done. If it's showing really healthy, I don't know, like 90% or whatever, just leave it. If it ain't broke, don't fix. No point wasting money. And keep in mind, in most cases, the car gives you a warning that it's about to fail, and that's in a message that displays here when you sort of first turn the car on. If you see that message, it's a ticking time bomb. It could be literally hours. It might not start on your next kind of stop, or it might be a few days. But if you see that message, do not delay, get that 12-volt replaced. But if you're not seeing that message, then like I say, we've got cars that are a lot older than this. This one's still on their original battery. If you want a more detailed video all about the 12-volt system and the 12-volt battery and should you change it, when should you change it, etc., comment below and we will do another video on that. But anyway, that is that determined. So we're going to be replacing that. So I'll just tick that. Next off, Rex runtime. Not really something we kind of would note down. Where do I go? I go into EDME. But given this car's done sort of quite high mileage, it's always interesting to see. So if we go into operating time for the range extender, if I do this here, so what have we got? 8,000 kilometers have been driven on the range extender. So given it's a 160,000 kilometer car, it's like 5%, I think, if my maths is correct. So not much use at all, but healthy enough. and operating time for the range extender is that many seconds. I will get Martin to overlay at the bottom how many hours that is, but I think that's like 120 or something like that. But yeah, so it's been used regularly ish. Essentially exactly how a range extender should be. It shouldn't be kind of depended on as a constant power source. It's there sort of on occasion when you need it. So, but that's all good. We obviously run it extensively on the collection. It's also due an oil change and actually a full service. For some reason, the service history on this one is out of sync. Like usually in fact, if I show you, so if I go in here. If I go here, so engine oil is basically due now, or last month, and then the brake fluid's not due until next year, and the vehicle check's not due till next year. So, yeah, I think based on what I understand with the feedback from the customer, I think if I go into here, the last service, which has this exclamation mark here. They didn't put the oil change in. They did it, but they didn't put it in. Also, that exclamation mark is just caused by the fact that the MOT date was wrong when they changed it, and there's no way to correct that. This is something we're going to touch on and tell you how you can avoid making the same mistake when we do our 3-part servicing and maintenance series. So again, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, do make sure to subscribe, not to miss out on it. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but it doesn't really bother me or us in terms of resale value. But basically, to get everything nice and in line, because everything is due essentially every 2 years, we're going to do a full service on this car, including the oil change. So Rex-wise, that is everything. And now key fobs. Okay, so the reason we check this is keys go missing, people order new keys, etc. And the keys come sort of coded and kind of programmed, ready to go. So what generally happens is the person who's ordered it, be it an owner or the dealer, they will get the new one kind of working, because you don't actually need any of this to do that. But then no one, or it's often forgotten to kind of disable the missing key. So in this case, this car has 3 keys. Now that's obviously one more than you're meant to have. But if I go here, what we want to basically check is that there isn't like maybe 2 keys were lost and one, but no, we're all good. So 3 keys in our hands and 3 are enabled. This, like I say, it's a very unusual case that there are 3 keys, or basically the reason we check this is sometimes we have a car with 2 keys and you'd think, oh, that's all good, but we go in here and we find that either one or essentially we find that 3 of them are enabled, which means there's a key out there which is kind of still active. The chances of, that ever being used or, causing an issue are so, like, it's 1,000,000 to 1, but while we're here, we can just disable the key that we don't have. Yeah, so that's all good. And then the last thing on my list for this car is just pad wear sensors. Not usually something we kind of drill into and look at, but from my kind of real kind of initial glance, I have a feeling these pads have been changed. I don't know if you can see them in there. Sorry, it's hard to get the camera in there. I'll show you when it's on the ramp, but and actually we'll confirm that. But I think they've been replaced. Now that's great, saves us a bit of work. But what sometimes happens is they get replaced, but the wear sensor doesn't get replaced, and so we just want to double check whether that's been done. To do that, what we have to do is it's kind of a bit of a workaround. We basically have to use the service function that we would use to like reset certain kind of service parameters or whatever you want to call them, and we don't actually do that. We'll end the function early, but we'll just check what the data is for those particular components. So we're waiting, as is often the case with ISTA, and here we go. Here's some data that we've got. So engine oil 0%, we know that because it's due. And then we've got front pads, rear pads, not calculated. So I think that means In the diagnostic tester, the availability is displayed is not calculated until the brake pad wear sensor is... Basically what it means is if those pads have been changed, they were changed before the wear sensor made contact with the disc, and as a result it doesn't need changing. What I was wanting to make sure is it doesn't say like 60% or 70% there, because then essentially what's happened is the wear sensor has been left in, and essentially that number's not right. The pad is actually probably sort of beefier than that. But again, not that that would cause any issues. It would just get to that percent and then keep going down. But just for sort of perfection, it would be something that we would replace. But yeah, that is all looking good. So we will end that there. I will tick that off. And really we've discovered the heated seat, or confirmed, validated the heated seat issue. We have decided to replace the 12 volt. We've printed our health certificate, and that's everything done. So yeah, I'll disconnect the car now from ISTA and we'll pick this video up then. A few days have passed and we finally got an opportunity to get the Blue i3 under the knife. A lot of parts have been ordered and they've already arrived, and I've made a start on quite a lot of it. Obviously front end has been disassembled. We'll get to that in a second. First, let me just show you some of the parts. So these three components here are obviously to rectify that front end damage. So as you saw at the beginning of the video, all we really saw was a few little broken slats here. There was this small indentation here, which you know, really wasn't that bad, and then there was a small crack on the front of the bumper, which you might remember, like a hairline crack. So it's one of those things. If you were kind of just looking at the car quickly, you'd go, oh, there's a little bit of damage, but actually this is what lies sort of beneath and what we've discovered. So this front component of what we call the airbox has been sort of completely smashed. While we didn't actually see any error codes to show that this wasn't working, it probably was because these will only operate in extreme temperature differences, so it wasn't hot or cold enough for that to work. But yeah, I do not see that motor sort of being able to manage. So it's definitely something that needed to be seen to, and yeah, you can see loads of bits of plastic, and yeah, generally not how it should be. So while we were there, we've also taken the opportunity to order a new one of these. The fact that none of these have cracked kind of confirms that it was a pretty low speed impact, because often we find these just sort of in a million pieces. So that's that, and we're going to assemble everything. It's pretty much just push fittings, all pretty easy. And what else have we got here? So, oh yeah, we also didn't notice, but the front under tray actually had two kind of lug points snapped as well. Luckily, it's a part that we carry here on the shelf, so yeah, we've got one of those just to get the job done properly. So one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video was that this car's missing a rear floor mat. Luckily, we've managed to find one in our pile of spares. We're usually struggling to find fronts. We have a sort of an abundance of rears. So yeah, that was easy to sort, and it's a real OEM BMW one. We'll just give it a clean and that'll look good. Heated seat's already been done, so it's a bit of a fiddly job. I believe we've got some B-roll of that, so we'll show you. But yeah, that's been done, and that's the old seat pad or cushion, which has all the heated elements in it. That's done. Wheels, so to speed things up, rather than wait for these to go off for refurbishment and new tyres, we've actually got a spare set, which ironically has new front tyres, which are the ones that needed changing, and the rears are almost identical treads. So it's the correct style, they're the correct handing, they've been fully refurbished, so that'll speed things up. And they'll go on at the end once I've finished everything else. Moving over to the car, as you can see, the airbox, or the front of the airbox, is already in place. Everything's nice and secure. We tend to actually leave stickers like this on. These are the stickers that are supplied by BMW Parts to show sort of when they were ordered and which dealer they were sourced by. So we leave those on, not really for any particular reason, but in the future it might help someone try and work out what's happened or when it happened, etc. So yeah, we've got nothing to hide. Those stay on. What's really important while we're here is to double check that actually there's no further damage and that everything was pretty superficial, and that's definitely the case, so we're quite relieved there. For example, and this was probably the one that we were most worried about, this impact bar kind of sits here and it's completely straight. I mean, it's not straight, but that's how it's meant to look, and it hasn't been sort of involved at all in that impact. And this here is just styrofoam, Again, sometimes that disintegrates, but it's all in perfect condition. So yeah, really good, and just confirms that impact was light, and indeed that it hasn't had a harder impact before. On that note, if you get a chance to properly inspect an i3 before purchase, do just double check that these outriggers here are all nice and straight, because if they're bent, that suggests that it's been in a big impact. And actually, if you want to see what that looks like, if you click above, we once found that on a car that came into us just for a service, so we'll link that right above. Let's also talk about the 12-volt battery, so that's why the front casing is out, and that's been replaced. You'll remember earlier in the video we saw on ISTA that it was suggesting that the health of it was borderline, and in fact, while we were waiting for parts to arrive and generally just finding time to get on with this, the car actually gave us a clue that that 12 volt's about to die. And by that I mean a message appears on the instrument display and it says battery discharging while stationary. And if you see that, that really is the car's kind of last warning that that battery is about to die. It might be days, weeks, sometimes even hours. You know, someone sees that in the morning, they pop to the shops, when they get back to the car won't start. So if you ever see that message and you're not interested in getting the battery changed sort of preventatively at 5, 6, whatever years old, then you can just kind of risk it and keep going. The original battery that came out, as you can see here, based on this stamp, this is the 2017 battery that was in the car from day one. So it's had a good run and it's done 100,000 miles. Absolutely no need to sort of replace those every 3 or 4 years or some silly number like that we see people mention. We've always got them on the shelf as well. So that's enough about the 12-volt battery now. We're actually thinking to do a whole dedicated video about those, so do make sure to subscribe if you're interested in finding out more about that. And just before we move on, wiper blades. So this car generally could do with new wiper blades. They weren't terrible, but they start to score the screen a little bit. Above all else, just a little pet hate of mine, someone's fitted non-BMW blades in the past, which is absolutely fine. We're going to be fitting Bosch ones as well, but they've used the wrong sort of the wrong mounting clip here. This one's the correct one, this one's the wrong one. It still works, but it just looks a bit ugly. So just for the sake of sorting that, we're going to throw new wiper blades at it. And that's about it at the front. Let's move round to the side. Here, if I just quickly lift the car a bit for you, you'll see that we've done the gaiters and we've also changed the top mounts. Now these had been changed before because these 3 bolts that hold the top mount in place were incredibly over torqued and we were super lucky for them to come out. These shearing on the way out is a very common issue, and it means we have to call a specialist in to remove the bit of the bolt that's left inside. But yeah, it was a case of going really slow and eventually they came out. So that was lucky, and yeah, looking much better. Coil cleaned up, that's the original one, but just gave it a little clean. And the brakes, you'll remember earlier in the episode, I think we were talking about brakes and that we might change them, we might not, or see what's happened. And actually, the pads are all very good. These pads have been changed, so that's good. And this disc has cleaned up really nicely, so there's no point changing it. It's not sort of lipped particularly badly or scored. So yeah, just a clean up, and that's really improved. And actually, if you come over here, I've kept the old ones just to show you how mangly they were. But yeah, there you go, gross. Disintegrated gaiter. Moving to the inside of the car, as you'll see, the steering wheel has already been removed, and there's the seat that's been fully repaired and put back in. Regarding the steering wheels, so I mentioned that obviously I want to sort this issue out here, and I slightly underestimated how expensive these are. I think they're 250-ish plus VAT, so really too much on a car of this price point. However, we're not particularly adverse to using second-hand parts, and this popped up quite cheaply. Obviously that button's in good order. The seller provided the VIN number for the car, and using one of the BMW systems we have access to, we can find out roughly what mileage and age that car was. It was about 30,000 miles, and it's a 2018, a late 2018. So I was toying with the idea of moving everything over, but actually it probably is a bit less work and more sensible just to put the whole new steering wheel in. It's got a little bit less wear, having done less mileage and being younger. There's a sort of bit of wear there on the original one. The new one looks a bit smarter, but also statistically the buttons are younger, haven't been used as much. So in terms of being preventative, it probably makes sense just to use the newer one. So yeah, put that one in there and we'll discard that one for now. It'll probably find a second life somewhere in the future. This seal, you'll remember we've ordered, so it's about £30 plus VAT. I haven't done it yet. I can't open this door because it'll turn the system on and then I'll get an airbag warning light. Not the end of the world, we can turn it off, but top tip, if you do need to take your steering wheel off or take your seat out, if you wait till the car's fully turned off, and by that I mean the interior lights turned off, then you're not going to set off any sort of driver restraint or SRS messages. So yeah, that seal will be done. It's actually over here, very over the top packaging. And there it is. For a complex part, a very intricate part with lots of kind of detail there, I don't think £30 plus VAT is particularly bad. So yeah, that's waiting to go on. And what else? So servicing, so we've done a full service. The car's service history was very sort of patchy in that things were done out of sync. With an i3, everything should be done at once, and that wasn't the case with this car. So we've basically done everything. Filter, oil, this filter's been on for a very long time if you look at how rusty it is, and the oil was pretty dirty, so yeah, it definitely wanted that. I don't think it's been done since 2020 based on the timestamp on that. Not that that matters hugely, because as we saw earlier, runtime on range extenders can vary considerably, and this one actually hasn't done that much mileage on the range extender. But yeah, all nice and fresh. Brake fluid's been flushed, washer fluid topped up. Coolant bottle, not something that we usually get out during a service, but in fact, if we just quickly pop round back to the front of the car, you'll see that the coolant is just on the minimum marker there, rather than the sort of max position where we would like to see it, which is basically where this bottle kind of joins. Now, what are the reasons for that, or should we be concerned? Well, no, we shouldn't. The first thing to check is whether there's any leaks, and everywhere where we've ever seen coolant potentially leak from is bone dry. So this car doesn't have a leak. And unlike a traditional sort of ICE car where the water does kind of have a way out other than leaking, which is through the engine by mixing with the oil and essentially being exhausted. With the i3, it's a completely closed system, and that water is simply just flowing from one component to another. There is no opportunity for it to mix and get exhausted, you know, in a gas form. So why is it low? Well, it's very likely that this car has at some point had a replacement component, probably the KLE or something like that. And what's probably happened is it simply wasn't properly bled, and then over time it kind of self-bled itself, and that's why it's gone down ever so slightly. So really not a concern for us. We're going to top that up, but the important thing was to actually check that everywhere where it could leak is bone dry, and that it's definitely not an issue. With the coolant stuff all out of the way, let's move round to the back. There was nothing actually to do here. We haven't done any other cosmetic polishing or anything. That's going to happen at the end. That kazoo sticker also has to come off. Just back here, we've got the front bumper. So where that little kind of hairline crack was, I've just put in a few plastic stitches from the back. It's not pretty, but it's worked well, and it will just hopefully stop that from spreading. So yeah, and before anyone asks, we don't do body shop repairs here. So if you've got something similar or you need some work, I'm afraid it's a body shop visit. It's not something that we do here. But on a car of this price point, just to hopefully avoid that getting any worse, we thought we'd do that. Right, if we come around here, there was one surprise once we got the car in the air, which was that it needed near side motor mount. So that's the new one already installed. We've done that already. And here's the old one. I say need. Okay, this might seem like overkill to a lot of people if I just move this into the light, but you can just see it's starting to crack there. Just where my thumb is, and that is only going to get worse. Now, obviously it's done 100,000 miles, and that crack is only tiny. We'll overlay some footage of one that's really bad, but the point is that started probably to go in the last few thousand miles, and it's only going to get worse. It's not something that sort of gets to that point and then stops. So why do it now when it might end up being bought by someone who's going to do low mileage or not really put any strain on this part? Well, we self-warrant our cars here, so that means if something does go wrong in our warranty period, be that 6 months or sometimes 12 or 24 months if the customer's extended, well, it's us who's got to come out and sort that or pay for it to be sorted. So yeah, basically it goes down to that age-old thing, prevention's better than cure, and it just means it's done, and it's got at least another 100,000 miles left in it. Bolt is single use, so that's been changed as well, and it's all been properly torqued up. So that's about everything in terms of the mechanical bits. So now I'm going to finish off and then we'll get the car up to the front, do all the cosmetics, and then give you a grand reveal. In addition to everything you've seen us do already, the car then underwent 2 days of cosmetic refinement, including a 2-stage mechanical polish, and I'm sure you'll agree, it now looks absolutely fantastic. In terms of costs, in the usual fashion, we'll overlay all our spend now, so if you want, you can pause the video and take a look at how much all the bits and bobs cost. We've divided this up into 3 pages: exterior, interior, and mechanical. Typically, just as we completed everything, the driver window lifter failed, which is quite a common issue, and this ended up being replaced as well. With that added on, the grand total to get this car retail ready was over £4,000, and no one item was really to blame. It's just that a few £100s here and there all end up adding up. So what's the conclusion? Well, firstly, this i3 arrived to us as a pretty good example. On the face of it, it didn't need much preparation, and this, to be honest, is the case for most older cars we come into contact with. They look all right, it's only when you get under them that you really find issues. If it ended up for sale elsewhere, it probably would have had a wash vac, maybe a couple wheels would have been refurbished, and that would have been it. It would have been up for sale with a £1 to £2 grand margin. Ironically, that's not even enough to cover our parts bill. Now, we're not saying there's anything wrong with buying a car that way, and if you've been watching this video thinking these are lunatics going way over the top, then by all means, buying this car from us is not going to make any sense. However, if you value everything being checked, overhauled, and want to buy an example which has been prepared to the absolute highest standard for the age and mileage, we're confident that by buying from us, you'll achieve this for a lot less than rolling the dice on a private sale or buying from a dealer elsewhere. And that's before you even consider the peace of mind that our warranty and after sales provide. So that's ultimately the conclusion, that price and value aren't necessarily the same things. On that note, if you'd like to buy this absolutely stunning example, it'll be going up on AutoTrader in the next few days. Or if you're eager to get in quick, you can contact us using the contact details below. If you found it interesting to see our preparation standards, please feel free to click up here to watch one of our previous preparation videos. And if you generally are interested in i3s and want to see more i3 content, please consider subscribing by clicking here. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.